I believe there's only 5 teams at the beginning of every season that can win the Super Bowl. Who are the 5 teams? Let's find out. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Marco. Give yourselves a big pat on the back. We made it through the dark, lonely, depressing NFL offseason. We are here on opening day. Chiefs, Lions. I don't think I ever thought I would see the Detroit Lions open an NFL season because I don't think they'd ever win a Super Bowl. Well, they're not the defending Super Bowl champs. The Chiefs are, of course, but they have been chosen to play the Detroit Lions. That's a little bit of a surprise. Usually this team is like the hot upcoming team. It was the Bills last year, the Texans the year before, maybe 2-3 years ago, and the NFL went with the Lions. So that's pretty interesting. Now, are the Lions going to be one of the 5 teams that can win the Super Bowl this year? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. But the purpose of this show, it's going to be a little shorter, I think, today. Maybe 25-30 minutes, I would think. The purpose of today's show is I'm going to give you all the division winners, and then I'll give you my playoff predictions, and then I'll give you some MVP predictions, some defensive player of the year, offensive rookie of the year, things like that. And then I will give you the 5 teams that I think you could put your money on. One of these 5 teams are going to win the Super Bowl. There's only 5, and I think that stays true as the season goes along. So, without further ado, let's hop right into it, and we will start with the AFC East. I'll put the standings up right here. So this is how I think it's going to shake out. I've got Buffalo, Miami, New York, and New England. I'm not buying any of the hype. There is some hype out there. There's not a lot of it, but there is some hype on the New England Patriots. I just don't see it. It all comes down to quarterback for me and Mac Jones. They're going to need to find out as soon as possible if he is the guy. I think last year showed us he's probably not. 5-12 feels a little bit low, but if you actually go through and pick every single game, 5-12 is about where this team lands every time I run through the predictions. They're going to have a good defense, but I don't think they're going to have much else. I don't like their skill positions aside from Ramondre Stevenson, and I'm hearing word out of camp that Zeke Elliott has fit in really nicely in New England. But again, I don't know. I'm just not buying it. I will be genuinely surprised if they do go 5-12. I think they're more of an 8-9 win team, but that schedule is going to be really hard. Enough about them. The New York Jets, everyone's sexy pick this year. They got Aaron Rodgers. They were a top 5 defense that last year. They're loaded at the skill positions. But here's the thing. Rodgers looked old last year. I mean, he just did. And the Packers were not very good last year. Now, is that him? Is that the Packers roster? Is that all the stuff that was surrounding him? I don't know. The Jets are going to be frisky, and I actually have them as a fringe playoff team, spoiler alert, and a 10-7 record should get you right on the cusp of the playoffs. So one game goes right, one game goes left. They're in the playoffs or they're out of the playoffs. Either way, I do like the Jets this year. I'm just not that high on them, and spoiler alert, they're not one of my 5 teams. Miami Dolphins. This has been a sexy Super Bowl pick. Full disclosure, I am a Chicago Bears fan. I am also a Miami Dolphins fan. It's a long story. I'll get into it at some point in time. But Miami, to me, is one of those teams that, you know, I see them lifting the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the year? Can I see it? I really can't, but I have a feeling they're going to be one of those 5 teams. They're so loaded all over that roster. You know, I don't have it right in front of me, but they had a top 10 defense the last couple of years, and they have slowly built a massively good defensive unit led by Jalen Ramsey. I know he's going to be out at least by until December. They also have Xavier Howard. They are absolutely loaded on defense. And then let's talk about the offense. Tyreek Hill, good luck stopping that. Jalen Waddle, good luck stopping that. Oh, but what about Tua Tagovailoa? He's injury prone. No, he's not injury prone. He's concussion prone. That's very, very different, okay? It's very different. Everyone can get concussions and this and that. Concussions aren't necessarily a reoccurring thing. You get a concussion, and then you don't have a concussion anymore until you get the next one. Versus if you get an ACL tear, You fix the ACL and the knee, we're not sure if it's always right. It's a different injury. Yes, careers have ended because of concussions, but that doesn't really scare me too much with Tua Tagovailoa. But at the end of the day, Miami's success is going to ride on Tua Tagovailoa. So I do like the Dolphins. They might be one of my 5 teams. I like them at 12-5. They might even get to 13-4. But this is a tough division, so I think a lot of those losses are, in fact, going to be in this division. They are a playoff team, I'll say that. And then your division winner, the Buffalo Bills. This is put up or shut up time for Baltimore, period. Point blank, period. Put up or shut up. If the Bills don't do it this year, especially if they don't win the division or let alone make the playoffs, I don't want to hear about them anymore. And yes, I've heard all offseason, Josh Allen's on the Madden cover. He's got the Madden curse now. BS, okay? Josh Allen is an incredibly good quarterback, a dual-threat quarterback. He still has Stephon Diggs. They still have a decent running game. I'd like to see them maybe shore that. Maybe go trade for Jonathan Taylor. Wouldn't that be wild? They probably won't, but it would be wild. Buffalo, 12-5, simply because the schedule is fairly easy if you look at it. They got a tough test Monday night against the Jets. But I'm talking about their outside division schedule, not too difficult. But again, if they don't do it this year, it ain't happening for Buffalo. Okay, let's go to the AFC North. This was the hardest one for me to pick, so I'll throw them up here too. Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. I will go bottom up again. Cleveland 7-10. Look, they're talented. They are super, super talented, top to bottom. What Deshaun Watson showed us last year, and again, it was because of all of his offseason stuff, and he came in halfway through. He looked off. He looked bad. If that Deshaun Watson shows up again, this is a 5 or 6 win team. If the Deshaun Watson of 2019, 20, 21 shows up, this is a 13-14 win team. But I'm going to split the difference and from 5 to 14 and call it 7. So 7-10. I could be way right. I could be way wrong. We're going to find out with Cleveland. Pittsburgh is another team that's getting a lot of love around the prediction circles. A lot of it has to do with Kenny Pickett. Oh, he looked so great at the end of last season. And they got Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson at wide receiver and TJ Watt on the defensive side of the ball. This is the big, sexy team. I think they're going to be good. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, they're going to be a 6 or 7. They're going to be not quite mid, a little bit above mid. I think they're going to be okay at 10-7. I think that's a playoff team. That's not one of the 5 teams that I am going to pick to win the Super Bowl. One of these teams are, though, as a matter of fact, both of these teams I think are going to be in my 5 teams to win the Super Bowl. Cincinnati, 11-6. Not a lot is being talked about Cincinnati. Everyone is putting all their eggs in the Joe Burrow is injured basket. All the injury reports that I'm seeing is he is ready to go and will play come week 1 this week. If Burrow's healthy, they're ready to roll. They've got the best receiving core in the NFL. I like them at 11-6. They're going to have to grind their way to the playoffs. But they will be in the playoffs, and they are one of my 5 teams. Lock it in to potentially win the Super Bowl. And that leaves the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Baltimore, I've seen 2 completely different ends of the spectrum for Baltimore. I have seen they are going to be a 8-win team, and they're going to be 15-3 or 15-2. I don't see either one. I cut it right down the middle again. I think they're a 12-5 team. I think they have enough to win the division. I don't like their defense as much. But here's why I like them more than Pittsburgh, and actually why I like them more than Cincinnati. 2 reasons. 1, they're not playing a first-place schedule like Cincinnati is. And 2, Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers and that offense is going to be electric from top to bottom, and that is going to keep them in every single game. Their defense is a little suspect. I would take Pittsburgh's defense over them. I would take Cincinnati's defense over them, but I like their offense over both of those teams, perhaps maybe a little bit more than Cincinnati, because I'm not sure about the integrity of Burrow's injury. I know I'm sort of contradicting what I said, but that's why I've got Baltimore winning the division. Let's go south. It's going to be a quick one. Jacksonville, Tennessee, Indianapolis, and Houston. I think this is potentially the worst division in football. Give me the Jaguars. I'm in on the hype. I don't see Tennessee doing anything. I think their time is up. I don't see Indianapolis winning more than 4 or 5 games. I really don't. And I don't see Houston winning more than 4 or 5 games. This division is trash from top to bottom. I should say it's top heavy. Jacksonville, to me, I love Trevor Lawrence. I love adding Calvin Ridley, Travis Etienne. That defense is going to have to play a little bit better this year, but give me the Jaguars and a runaway of the AFC South. Finally, let's go West. Just pencil them in. Actually, use a pen. Use a permanent marker. Give me the Chiefs to win the division. But this is where it gets a little interesting. I'm not as high on the Chargers this year. I'm sort of getting off the Chargers train, and it's mostly because of their head coach. I'm not a big fan. And also because I've seen this movie with them 3 years in a row now. They are the hot team. They're the sexy team. Herbert this, Herbert that. Oh my God, they're going to be amazing. Oh no, who's going to beat the Chargers? Turns out just about everybody. They're a mid team. They're a mid team, and they make most of the mistakes themselves. It's not Herbert's fault. It's not necessarily the defense's fault. I'm not even going to pin it all on the head coach. I think as a collective unit, I think they just have leadership problems and cohesion problems, if you will, and that's what is going to prevent them from making the playoffs. I'm going out on a limb and saying the Chargers will not make the playoffs in 2023. Broncos, frisky. I'm not out on Russell Wilson yet. I'm not out on him yet. I want to see what he looks like with Sean Payton. I think Nathaniel Hackett was the worst head coach that I've seen in a long time. I still can't get over the debacle of week 1 against Seattle last year. I think I'm thinking of the right game. Complete and total mismanagement of everything, not just the clock, everything in that game. They were terrible last year because of coaching, and now they got a real deal coach and a real deal defense. They were a good defense last year. They didn't lose all that much this offseason. So I think if we're sitting here in December and we're doing this show, do not be surprised if the Denver Broncos are knocking on the door of a 2-3, possibly, dare I say it, a 1 seed. But I will hold my reservation. I will hold everything until I see what the Peyton and Wilson connection looks like. If it's good, they're going to be good. If it's bad, they're not going to be so good. So in the meantime, I have them mid at 6-11. And the Raiders, I think they're a disaster. I think Jimmy G is putting a Band-Aid on cancer. I just don't see it with the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they're a 6-win team. All right, let's hop over to the NFC. We'll begin with the East. Throw it up and yell at me, Eagles fans. I've got the Cowboys winning the division, Eagles, Giants, and Commanders. So this division, I think, is going to be incredibly fun to watch all year long. And yes, I am going with the Dallas Cowboys. Much like the Chargers of the AFC or the Bills, if you will, put up or shut up. If I don't see it out of Dallas this year, it ain't happening out of them. I want to see them win in January, and I think they're going to be, there's some people that are not picking them to even make the playoffs. How? Honestly, how? Even if they don't win this division, how do you see them missing the playoffs? The NFC, as you'll see when we go through this, I don't think the NFC is very good this year. There's a few, it's very, very top-heavy, led by the Eagles and the 49ers. After those two teams, I think it's a wide-open race in the NFC. So why aren't the Cowboys going to make the playoffs? I just don't get it. It's a top-5 defense. They've got a top-5 skill positions between CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard. They are loaded. It is going to be a hard team to stop. Yes, I understand it's going to have to come down to Dak. It always does, but I like Dak. I do. I really do like Dak Prescott, and I like the Cowboys to win the NFC East. And the Eagles, I think they take a little bit of a step back this year. Not a massive step back, just a little one. I think they finish second. I think the division is going to be but 1 or 2 game difference. What do I have them here? Yeah, 1 game difference. I have the Cowboys at 13-4 and the Eagles at 12-5. I think it's going to be a 1 game difference here in this division. The Eagles, listen, most of the reason why I'm taking a step back on the Eagles has nothing to do with anything that I dislike about the Eagles, and more that I want to err on the side of history which is Super Bowl losers tend to not really do well the following season. I don't see that with the Eagles necessarily, but I do see a little bit of a step back from them. Maybe a little bit of a sophomore slump from Jalen Hurts. Maybe a little bit of a step back from A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Maybe. I could completely eat my words, and they could completely be an absolute unit again, an absolute wagon, if you will. But one thing that is not being talked about at all is they played a cupcake schedule last year. An absolute cupcake last place schedule. That's number one. Number two, the NFC East has not had a repeat champion in how many years? So give me the Cowboys to win the division. Eagles second. The Giants 9-8. Are they one of my Super Bowl 5 teams? No, they're not. But they're going to be frisky. They're going to be fun. They're going to win some games they shouldn't win. I have them at 9-8. And the Commanders, same thing. I have them at 8-9, just one game difference. Are they going to win games they shouldn't? Yes, they will. Are they going to be a playoff team? Probably not. Super Bowl 5, absolutely not. But they will be fun to watch. And who's their quarterback? I don't know. Sam Howell? I don't know. Not too high on the Commanders, if you will. My division, NFC North. Throw it up. I'm doing it. Give me the Lions. Lions to win the NFC North. I'm on the train. Full disclosure, my wife and her entire family, they are from Detroit. They are big Lions fans. And I got in a massive argument with them this past weekend because they said, you need to jump on the Lions train. You ought to be so excited. They're going to beat the Chiefs on Thursday night. And I said, I am taking the Chiefs and the points. And I was facetiously saying I will take the Lions to not win the division. And I will say this on camera, and I will say it like this. And what I will say is, with the Lions, I have seen this franchise over the years. You had Megatron. You had Matthew Stafford. They had Ndamukong Suh. There has been hype at various different points around this team throughout its relatively recent history. And they did nothing. Nothing. One playoff appearance, two, is it? I know it's no win since the 90s. So until I see it, until they go out and maybe beat the Chiefs tonight, or start 6-1, or are 10-3 by the end of the season, I need to see it. I want to see it because that defense was horrible last season. As a matter of fact, I think it was the worst in football, if I'm not mistaken. The offense is going to be awesome, providing, of course, Jared Goff doesn't take a complete turn on this team. The offense will be very good. The defense, I don't know. And they didn't exactly really address that in the offseason either, especially in the draft. They went and got Jahmyr Gibbs with their first-round pick. They should have gotten somebody else on defense. But they chose a running back, and they let DeAndre Swift go to the Eagles. So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. Maybe I'm the one with... I can't be the one with egg on my face because I'm picking them to win the division. But I need to see it with the Detroit Lions. Number 2, Minnesota Vikings. I'm not off the Vikings train yet. They're not getting any love in this offseason by anybody. I understand last year they had the worst point differential of any team in the playoffs. They won so many close games. But I think there's something to be said about that, right? There's got to be something to be said. I understand it's a different team. I understand it's last year, but there has to be something to be said about a team that wins those types of games, right? Like, you can't use that as a negative. They won the games. So, I don't know. Yes, some of them were fluky and weird. Like that Buffalo game last year was maybe one of the weirdest games I've ever seen. But that 30-something, whatever, it was the largest comeback in NFL history. That 36-point comeback against the Colts, that's not a fluke. How can you call that a fluke? I understand I'm nitpicking for my argument here, but I'm not ready to let the Vikings die yet. They were my pick last year to go to the NFC Championship game. Obviously, that didn't work. They were my pick to win the North. That cashed in. This year, I think they're a playoff team. They're not a Super Bowl team. And don't be surprised if the Vikings are the reigning, defending, and new, or same, NFC champion, NFC North champion at the end of the year. Chicago Bears, 9-8. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the Bears on this show because I will probably do a lot of Bears takes as the season goes along. Look, the Bears season comes down to two things and two things only. One is Justin Fields the guy. Look, he's a hell of a runner. He was very exciting last year, but they threw the ball like 8 times a game. That doesn't win in the NFL. I'm sorry. It doesn't win in the NFL. Now, if Justin Fields comes out and he rushes for 100 and he throws 20 times a game and gets 2 touchdowns and 180, 200 yards a game passing, that's fine. That'll win games. That's good enough to win in the NFL on a consistent basis. But if he's running for his life and running 100 times a game and he's only throwing the ball 8 times, you're not winning in this league. Point blank, period. Number two, that defense. That defense was really bad last year. This year, they are, I believe, the youngest defense in the NFL by age. Not a lot of veteran presence, but there's some rumblings of the 2018 Bears with this team, right? Just very, and they, this team doesn't have the Khalil Mack, but new-ish coach Eberflus entering his second year. Unknown defense, not really big names on that defense, and then they became big names because they had a big season and an offense that we weren't really sure about. That's the recipe this year, and super easy schedule aside from the first 5 to 6 weeks. That's gonna be, I think, what we open with the Packers, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, Minnesota's in there, Detroit's in there, Washington's in there. That's a tough start to the year. And lastly, oh my God, I don't think I've ever hoped to be more right about something in my entire life. And that is I don't buy the hype of Jordan Love. He's not going to be Rodgers 2.0. I think the Packers I think they were not a very good team last year. I don't think they're going to be a very good team this year. I think 8 wins, 9 wins is about where I have them, and I think that's where they're going to end up. Listen, if the Packers go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love and he's another Hall of Famer, I think I'm going to quit being a football fan. I cannot handle if that happens. Give me the Packers with 8 to 9 wins. I think 8, we'll call it 8 and 9 for them. All right, let's go south. New Orleans, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and Carolina. New Orleans, to me, is the only team that really jumped out in this division. I like their weapons on offense. I like their defense. Last year, I think the addition of Derek Carr is a huge upgrade from Taysom Hill and whoever they had last year. Yes, Carr has regressed every year in the past 3 years, but he's still better than what they had last year. The second-year coach down there, let's give him a chance to kind of get this thing going. I like the Saints to win the division at 10 wins. They also have a super easy schedule. Atlanta, another sexy pick. People like to make the playoffs. I'm not there yet as a playoff team, and all of it's going to come down to Ritter, their quarterback. I don't see it with him, but they do have a crap ton of talent between the rookie Bijan Robinson, who went high in every fantasy draft, including mine. Kyle Pitts at tight end, Drake London at wide receiver. They're loaded all over the place on offense. They still have a pretty good defense, and they were frisky last year. I think they're going to be equally frisky this year. All right, finally, let's wrap it up with the NFC West, and we'll get to the playoffs. San Francisco, Seattle, LA, and Arizona. We'll start from the back real quick. Arizona and LA are two disaster teams. I see no possibility of either of these teams making the playoffs. I think they're going to have 7 wins combined between these two teams. That's how bad they are. Arizona doesn't even know who their quarterback is. Kyler Murray's out for God knows how long. It's pretty obvious they're tanking. They just cut Colt McCoy a couple weeks ago. They have no quarterback heading into the season. I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, really, the only good player on that team right now is Budda Baker. And Zach Ertz, I think he's still there at tight end, but it doesn't matter. Arizona's horrible. And LA, they sold out to win their Super Bowl. They got it. Congratulations. This is the price to pay for it. They are going to be awful again this year. Watch out for them to potentially get rid of Matt Stafford at some point. And maybe Aaron Donald, too. All right. Seattle. Geno Smith. Is he the real deal? He was a first-round pick at some point, wasn't he? Look, it was a fun story last year. I just don't see them replicating it. I think if you want to make the case for Seattle, It's that you don't believe in Brock Purdy and the Niners, and therefore you have them winning the division over San Francisco. But San Francisco is just a much more complete roster from top to bottom. I mean, they've got dudes everywhere. Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy, yes, and George Kittle. How can I forget George Kittle? That's just the offensive side of the ball. On the other side, they've been a top 10 defense, 7 years in a row? And they just keep adding to it. So for me, this is a pretty easy one. Throw San Francisco in. They win the division. Give them 10 wins, maybe 11. And Seattle is just going to be a victim of a really, really hard schedule for them. I think they take a little step back this year and miss the playoffs at 8 and 9. All right. Speaking of the playoffs, here's how I have the playoffs looking for the NFC and the AFC. I'll throw it up there on the screen. So, the number 1 seed in the AFC is the Chiefs, then the Ravens, then Miami, then Jacksonville, then Buffalo, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh. And then on the NFC side, Dallas, the 1 seed, Detroit. Yes, Detroit, the 2 seed. That's just the way it falls. New Orleans, the 3 seed. San Francisco, the 4. Number 5, Philadelphia, the 6 seed, Minnesota. And at 7, the New York Giants sneak in. So, we'll roll through as fast as we can. Wild card weekend, here we go. I have the Bills, Bengals, and Ravens advancing in the AFC. The Niners, Vikings, and Lions with the upset. Give them the first playoff win since the 90s. The Lions will move on in the NFC. Divisional round, Bills over Ravens, Bengals over Chiefs, 49ers over Lions, Cowboys over Vikings. And that brings us to championship weekend. Bengals over Bills to go to the Super Bowl, and the 49ers will beat the Cowboys to get to Super Bowl 58. And in Super Bowl 58, I like the Bengals. Give me the Bengals to win the Super Bowl this year. Why? I don't know. I like Joe Burrow. And besides, these predictions are probably going to be way off. But give me the Bengals over the Niners. That would be the 3rd time those two teams faced in their history. And this time I think the Bengals would get the better of San Francisco. So who are the 5 teams? To me, I think it's pretty clear who the 5 teams are. Kansas City's number 1. These are 5 teams that could win the Super Bowl. Kansas City's number 1. Philadelphia's 2. Dallas is 3. Cincinnati's 4. And I think Baltimore is 5. If you want to throw 2 more in there at 6 and 7, though they're my fringe, I think you've got Buffalo and Miami. Let's talk a little bit, and we'll close the show with this. Talk a little bit about MVP, DPOY, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, things like that. So, my MVP this year, I'm going to give it to Patrick Mahomes. He will win MVP number 3. Rookie of the Year, I have Bijan Robinson winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And Defensive Rookie of the Year, I went a little bit off the beaten path, if you will, and I'm going with Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was a man that I wanted the Bears badly to draft, but oh well. And for my Defensive Player of the Year, give me Micah Parsons, staying in the division. Give me Micah Parsons of the Dallas Cowboys. So that's how I have it rolling, everybody. So let's check back in 3 or 4 months and see how good or bad these predictions are. Enjoy the opening of the NFL season, and we'll see you for my picks later